Imagine waking up one day to find everything grinding to a halt. Your phone shows no signal. The ATMs in your city are dark, screens lifeless. Gas pumps at the local station are frozen, refusing to dispense fuel. Further afield, you hear whispers, then shouts as news trickles in. Global shipping is paralyzed, with container ships adrift, unable to dock, power grids flicker, and in unseen critical facilities, radiation monitors, the very devices designed to warn of invisible dangers, go offline, silently. This isn't a scene from a dystopian blockbuster. It's a chilling reality that unfolded in Ukraine in 2017, a precursor, a warning shot. What weapon caused this widespread chaos, this digital siege? An invisible one. A phantom, a piece of code, stolen, it's believed, from the digital arsenal of the world's most powerful spy agency. Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, where we distill the world's most impactful books into actionable intelligence for leaders like you. I'm your host, and today we're unlocking the vault on a book that reads like a techno-thriller but is hauntingly real. This is How They Tell Me the World Ends, The Cyberweapons Arms Race, by the investigative journalist Nicole Perlroth. For years, Perlroth, a lead cybersecurity reporter for the New York Times, dived headfirst into a clandestine world most of us never knew existed. Her book isn't just about hackers and code. It's about a hidden, multi-billion-dollar global market for something called zero-day exploits. These are flaws in the software that powers our lives, from our phones and laptops to the critical infrastructure that underpins society, flaws that, once discovered and weaponized, can grant attackers complete control. Perlroth reveals an escalating arms race where governments, intelligence agencies, and even private mercenaries trade these digital skeleton keys, often with devastating and unintended consequences. Over the next 30 minutes, we're going to peel back the layers of this invisible threat. You'll learn precisely what 0 days are, how this shadowy marketplace for them operates, and the complex, often contradictory role governments play in both exploiting these vulnerabilities and, theoretically, protecting us from them. We'll explore the catastrophic fallout when these potent cyberweapons leak or are unleashed, as they inevitably have been, and most importantly, we'll discuss why this seemingly technical issue of cybersecurity is, in fact, one of the most significant strategic risks that you, as executives, leaders, and aspiring entrepreneurs, face today, even if your business isn't directly in the technology sector. The invisible world Perlroth uncovers has very visible, very tangible, and potentially company-ending consequences. So, lock your virtual doors, and let's explore how they tell us the world might end. Imagine yourself at an awkward dinner party. That's a scene Perlroth paints early in her book, a tense gathering with individuals she calls exploit brokers. Oh, these aren't your typical Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. They're shadowy figures operating in a gray zone, facilitating the sale of these powerful digital vulnerabilities. As she pressed them about their clientele, who exactly was buying these tools capable of bringing down networks or spying on anyone, they'd artfully dodge. One broker, cornered, simply gestured to his plate and said, "This salmon is exquisite." The conversation then veered, almost desperately, to the merits of wild-caught versus farmed fish. Why such secrecy? What were they so determined to hide? They were hiding the keys to the kingdom. They were selling 0 days. So what exactly is a 0-day exploit? Think of it this way. Every piece of software, from your operating system to your favorite app, has the potential for undiscovered flaws or bugs. A 0-day is a bug that the software vendor, say Microsoft, Apple, or Google, doesn't yet know about. This means there's 0 time, 0 days for them to have developed a patch or a fix. An exploit is a piece of code written to take advantage of that specific flaw. If a hacker, a government agency, or a criminal group possesses a 0-day exploit for a widely used piece of software, they essentially have a secret backdoor, a universal skeleton key, perhaps even what some in the industry call God mode. The ability to bypass security and control a system remotely, undetected. Perlroth uses the analogy of a spare key to every house on the block, a key that only you possess. The power of these tools is almost unimaginable. Consider Stuxnet, one of the most famous early examples detailed in the book. Discovered in 2010, Stuxnet was a highly sophisticated computer worm, widely believed to be a joint American-Israeli creation designed to sabotage Iran's nuclear program. It didn't involve bombs or soldiers. It used a series of 0-day exploits to infiltrate and then subtly manipulate the industrial control systems running Iran's uranium enrichment centrifuges, causing them to self-destruct, all while making it look like a series of unfortunate accidents. This was cyber warfare, achieving tangible, physical destruction. This highlights the dual nature of 0 days, a central theme in Perlroth's investigation. Governments, particularly intelligence agencies and military cyber commands, crave these exploits. They see them as invaluable for espionage. Imagine being able to silently read the emails of a foreign leader or monitor critical infrastructure, and for offensive cyber operations like Stuxnet. But the very existence of these hoarded flaws, these unpatched vulnerabilities, creates a universal risk. If the United States government knows about a flaw in Microsoft Windows and keeps it secret to use offensively, then every single user of that version of Windows around the world remains vulnerable to anyone else who might independently discover or acquire that same flaw. Perlroth describes a nascent grey market she stumbled upon. Stories emerging from places like Miami, not just of shadowy criminals, but of legitimate-looking companies, defense contractors, and even allied nations, all discreetly trading these potent digital weapons. For you as leaders, the implications are profound. This isn't just about having strong passwords or the latest antivirus software. Standard cybersecurity measures are designed to protect against known threats, but a 0 day, by its very definition, is unknown to your defenders. It bypasses existing firewalls, intrusion detection systems, the works. It underscores a massive supply chain risk. The software and hardware you purchase, the systems your organization relies on, could harbor these ticking time bombs, vulnerabilities that are already known, cataloged, and potentially weaponized by sophisticated actors. The actionable thought here is stark. Do you truly understand the origin, the integrity, and the potential hidden vulnerabilities within your most critical software and hardware stack? Perlroth's work compels us to expand our concept of threat modeling beyond typical malware or phishing attacks, to consider scenarios where the very tools we trust are compromised at a fundamental level by actors with nation-state resources. So how did this bizarre high-stakes market for digital skeletons keys even begin? How did finding bugs in software evolve from a niche hobby for eccentric programmers into a multi-million, perhaps even billion-dollar, clandestine industry? Perlroth traces the fascinating and often surprising origins. She tells the story of John Waters, who back in the late 1990s acquired a failing security company called iDefense. Facing financial pressure and the acquisition of BugTrack, a popular public mailing list where hackers disclosed vulnerabilities, Waters made a pioneering move. He essentially formalized the concept of a public bug bounty program. iDefense started offering cash, initially just a few $100s, to hackers for disclosing vulnerabilities to them, so they could then inform their corporate clients and the affected vendors. This was radical at the time, paying hackers for bugs. It was seen by many as encouraging bad behavior. But Perlroth masterfully contrasts this nascent, public-facing, and relatively low-paying defensive market with a far more lucrative and far more secretive market that was simultaneously taking root in the shadows. She introduces us to characters like Jimmy Sabian, a pseudonym of course. One of the early exploit brokers. He describes how, even as iDefense was paying a few $100 or $1,000 for a bug, government contractors, fueled by the burgeoning demands of United States intelligence agencies like the National Security Agency, or NSA, and the Central Intelligence Agency, or CIA, especially after the 9/11 attacks, were quietly offering hackers 5, even 6 figures for the very same vulnerabilities. The government wasn't interested in patching them, they wanted to weaponize them. This is a crucial insight from This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. The 0-day market developed along 2 parallel tracks. There's the public, or white market, side, focused on defense, exemplified by bug bounty programs run by companies like Microsoft and Google today, where researchers are rewarded for finding and responsibly disclosing flaws so they can be fixed. This market is growing, but the payouts are still often dwarfed by the second track, the highly profitable, highly secretive black or gray market. This offensive market is driven almost entirely by the insatiable appetite of government intelligence agencies and military cyber commands worldwide for exclusive access to powerful exploits. Perlroth dedicates significant attention to the role of the United States government, particularly the NSA and its elite hacking unit, Tailored Access Operations, or TAO. She recounts the work of figures like Charlie Miller and Chris Valasek, brilliant hackers who demonstrated shocking vulnerabilities like remotely controlling a Jeep Cherokee and the ensuing interest from government agencies. She even draws an analog to a pre-digital era operation, Project Gunman, where the CIA secretly bought a compromised encryption machine from a Swiss company, Crypto AG, and for decades sold these rigged machines to over 120 countries, allowing the US and its allies to read their supposedly secure communications. The mindset was similar: gain an information advantage by exploiting trust and technology. The US government developed something called the Vulnerabilities Equities Process, or VEP. This is, in theory, a formal process where different government agencies debate whether to disclose a newly discovered software vulnerability to the vendor so it can be patched, or to keep it secret, to hoard it, for intelligence gathering or offensive cyber operations. Perlroth's reporting reveals the immense pressure and inherent conflict of interest within this process. The argument for hoarding, often championed by the NSA, is colloquially known as the NO-bus fallacy, nobody but us. The belief, or perhaps the hope, is that if we, the US government, have discovered this powerful flaw, nobody else has or nobody else will, and therefore it's safe to keep it for our exclusive use against our adversaries. But the book powerfully demonstrates how often this assumption proves tragically wrong. For leaders listening, this uncovers a fundamental and deeply uncomfortable tension. The very entities often tasked with protecting national infrastructure and cyber defenses are also, simultaneously, major players in discovering, acquiring, and stockpiling the tools that create vulnerabilities in that same infrastructure. This means that blind trust in either software vendors to have perfectly secure products, or in government agencies to always prioritize defense over offense, is naive. Perlroth's investigation introduces another angle to the insider threat. It's not just about disgruntled employees. The very tools developed or acquired by your nation's defenders could, if mishandled, leaked, or stolen, become the most potent threats against you. The actionable point here is fostering a culture of what you might call healthy paranoia regarding the security of your critical systems. Assume that vulnerabilities exist, even in widely trusted software, because this hidden market thrives on their existence. This brings us to the inevitable, terrifying question: what happens when these carefully stockpiled, incredibly powerful digital weapons get out? And they do get out. Perlroth's narrative takes a darker turn as she chronicles the story of the shadow brokers. In the summer of 2016, this mysterious group appeared online, claiming to have hacked the Equation Group, a codename widely understood to refer to the NSA's most sophisticated hacking unit. To prove their claim, the shadow brokers began leaking some of the NSA's own cyberweapons, the very zero-day exploits and hacking tools the agency had developed or acquired at great expense and kept secret for years. Suddenly, this wasn't a theoretical risk discussed in classified briefings. The NSA's crown jewels were out in the wild, available to anyone: hostile nations, criminal organizations, rogue hackers. The consequences, as detailed extensively in This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends, were nothing short of catastrophic. Two major global cyber attacks in 2017 directly utilized these leaked NSA tools, particularly an exploit codenamed Eternal Blue, which targeted a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows. The first was WannaCry. Attributed to North Korea, WannaCry was a ransomware attack that spread like wildfire in May 2017. It encrypted files on hundreds of thousands of computers in over 150 countries, demanding Bitcoin for their release. It famously crippled parts of the United Kingdom's National Health Service, forcing hospitals to cancel appointments and divert ambulances. It hit global businesses like FedEx, Renault, and Telefonica. The estimated damages ran into the billions of dollars. Just a month later, an even more destructive attack, NotPetya, was unleashed. While disguised as ransomware, NotPetya was in reality a wiper designed to cause maximum damage, primarily targeting Ukraine. But like WannaCry, it used the leaked Eternal Blue exploit and others to spread rapidly and indiscriminately beyond Ukraine's borders. It devastated major multinational corporations, including Maersk, the world's largest shipping conglomerate, which suffered losses of around $300 million as its global operations ground to a halt. Pharmaceutical giant Merck, advertising firm WPP, and many others reported hundreds of millions in damages. The total global economic impact of NotPetya is estimated to be well over $10 billion, making it the most financially damaging cyber attack in history, all from tools originally developed by a government to spy and potentially attack its adversaries. Perlroth uses these devastating events to illustrate the boomerang effect. Cyber weapons, unlike kinetic weapons, are just code. Once released, they can be copied, repurposed, and unleashed by anyone, anywhere, often with little control over where they spread or who they impact. The weapons the NSA designed for specific, targeted operations against perceived enemies came back to cause widespread, indiscriminate collateral damage to businesses, hospitals, and critical infrastructure globally, including in allied nations and within the United States itself. The book also touches on the expanding mercenary market, with former government hackers from places like the United States going to work for other countries, sometimes with questionable human rights records, like the United Arab Emirates in the case of Project Raven, building offensive cyber capabilities for them. The proliferation is undeniable. Of course, there's a countertrend, a resistance. Perlroth highlights efforts like Google's Project Zero, a team of elite security researchers dedicated to finding zero-day vulnerabilities in any software, not just Google's, and responsibly disclosing them to drive patching. Bug bounty programs have also expanded significantly, with tech companies paying more to incentivize hackers to report flaws defensively. But the core dilemma remains the offensive market, driven by government demand, and the strategic advantage offered by hoarded zero days often outpaces and outbids the defensive efforts trying to drain this dangerous swamp. For leaders, the lesson here is that cyber risk is no longer a localized IT problem. It is systemic, it is globalized, and it is existential. An attack targeting a government or a company on the other side of the world can directly impact your operations, your supply chain, your bottom line, through these interconnected digital systems. The critical importance of patching systems became glaringly obvious after Eternal Blue was leaked and weaponized. But that only helps with known vulnerabilities. The real terror lies in the unknown 0 days currently being hoarded and traded. This reinforces the absolute necessity of robust resilience and recovery plans. You must operate under the assumption that breaches, potentially severe ones, will happen. The actionable insight is to champion and invest in comprehensive incident response capabilities and business continuity planning that genuinely accounts for potentially catastrophic cyber events, not just routine data breaches. It might also lead you to question your reliance on single-source software or hardware for critical functions where diversification could mitigate some risk. So let's recap the stark and frankly unsettling reality painted by Nicole Perlroth in This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. An invisible, high-stakes cyberweapons arms race is well underway, hidden from public view but impacting us all. This race is fueled by a secretive, lucrative global market for powerful software vulnerabilities known as zero-day exploits. Governments, especially those of major world powers, are among the biggest customers and hoarders of these digital skeleton keys, often prioritizing offensive capabilities over defensive disclosures, creating systemic risks for everyone. We've seen, through devastating real-world examples like WannaCry and NotPetya, attacks born from leaked government cyberweapons, the potential for catastrophic global economic and societal damage. Our ever-increasing dependence on interconnected digital technology, from our personal devices to the critical infrastructure that runs our world, makes us incredibly, terrifyingly vulnerable to these unseen threats. This knowledge isn't just for your Chief Information Security Officer or your IT department. As Perlroth compellingly argues, this is a strategic leadership issue. First, Perlroth's work implores you to assess your organization's real exposure, looking beyond standard cybersecurity metrics, understand where your critical data and systems lie, and how they might be susceptible not just to common threats, but to these more sophisticated, targeted attacks that leverage unknown flaws. Second, champion a culture of security and resilience from the very top. This isn't just about budget allocation, it's about making security a shared responsibility and a continuous priority, fostering that healthy paranoia we talked about. Third, critically consider the systemic risks embedded in your supply chain and your digital infrastructure. Who provides your software, your hardware? What are their security practices? How exposed are you if one of your key vendors is compromised? And finally, stay informed. This landscape of cyber threats, particularly the zero-day market and nation-state activity, changes with breathtaking speed. Understanding this hidden world, the one Perlroth has so painstakingly illuminated, is the absolute first step toward navigating its treacherous terrain. Thank you for joining us on CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf. We hope this journey into This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends has armed you with valuable insight. For a full transcript of today's episode and accompanying visualizations that can help illustrate some of these complex concepts, please visit our website at ceoslibrary.com. If you found this discussion valuable, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with other leaders and aspiring entrepreneurs in your network. And for those who want to dive much deeper into Nicole Perlroth's incredible investigation, and we highly recommend you do. You can find a link to purchase This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends in the episode description. Understanding these invisible threats is no longer optional. It's essential for leadership in the 21st century. Are you prepared?